9, 8.
You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Hey, everybody. I am super excited to be here tonight. I think I've had one of the best days that you can possibly have as a comic book collector because, as it turns out, something happened, and I'm actually going to be getting my holy trinity of comic book grails. So I'm in a really great mood. I mean, I've been looking for my X-Men #1, my giant size X-Men #1, and my Hulk 181 for a very long time. I'm a big X-Men fan. You know, you can see it there on the X. Love X-Men. And the best news is it's an international deal. It's coming from a prince in Nigeria. It's going to be fantastic, though. All he wants is like 10 copies of Turok #1 and 10 copies of Warriors of Slam #1, and all I have to do is send over $500 in a wire transfer, and I'm going to have all 3 of the grails that I've been looking for more than a decade. And that's really exciting. So I'm in a great mood. I think it's just really going to set up this awesome experience we're going to have. On a completely unrelated note, I think we should talk about some of the things that are happening out there in the comic book community that aren't as on the up and up as this deal that I've set up with this person. So I'm lucky I'm getting my grails and I'm flying high on that one. But tonight we're going to talk about the other side, the people that are going to get scammed. So if you've ever thought you might get scammed or if you've ever been scammed, this is the place to be so you can learn about some of the red flags of comic book scams. Hey, everybody. Welcome back into the show. I am your host, Christopher, a.k.a. the Bronze Age Nerd. And we are actually going to have not only my co-host is going to be coming on a little bit later, but we're also going to have a special guest tonight that I want to bring in. Yes, I absolutely need to send my social security number because you want to make sure that they have everything they need to complete the transaction that's necessary for those shipping details. That's a very good point. So I'm going to bring in the special guest we have tonight. Everyone, I want you to welcome Scott from Gamma Base Comics, and here he is. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Hello, everybody.
So, Scott, real fast, I think it's important when we're bringing on a guest to the show, people get to see me every week. They get to see Kyle every week. So a lot of people are just going to be meeting you for the first time. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of the comic book world and what you've been doing in the comic book hobby for, the last couple decades?
Yeah. My name is Scott Tuckey. I am the co-owner of Gamma Base Auctions with my partner in crime, Chris Gugliotti. I actually have been buying and selling since the 90s, but we started doing Facebook live auctions in 2016. We saw everybody basically doing them, and we're like, well, we can do this. And I was able to quit my full-time job. I'm doing this full-time now, and it's been 7 years, and it's wonderful.
Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, to be doing it now, like overwhelmingly, there's going to be some very negative things we talk about tonight, right? But I think overwhelmingly, it's probably safe to say that you've had mostly positive experiences as a seller in the community. Oh,
absolutely. I would say 90% positive, 10% negative for, obvious things. But I've met a great group of people with the Gamma Base. I've met new friends. They're like family to us, most of them. And it's just a really great time.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Because I do want to make sure that since we are going to be talking about, all those negative things that are out there in comic books, and it is something that I don't know if it's happening more or if it's getting caught more or both. But I am seeing more and more stories of people sharing about being scammed or having something happen to them, unfortunately. And I don't want people to think that everything out there is negative, everything out there is doom and gloom. But especially entering the holiday season, every year, this is a very, very important time to be careful. People that may not be as experienced in buying and selling comics are out there, maybe try to pick up gifts for loved ones, or they're trying to, complete their end of their year comic book shopping list, that kind of stuff. And there are people out there that are looking for your money in a much more hard up fashion. So that's why we're going to be talking about this. And I just wanted to kind of set the scene here that it's not all negative. And I think it's great that we have somebody like Scott who's been doing those kinds of sales, especially on Facebook for that long, because I think one thing that's important to remember is a lot of the stuff happens on places like Facebook, Instagram, also some places like Craigslist and a few other places like that, more so than some of the main selling platforms, because there's less scrutiny, there's less security, there's less oversight. So I think you can offer a really great perspective there.
One that didn't exist when Scott and I started selling on Facebook that exists now, stupid Facebook Marketplace. Oh.
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Did you see the story out of GalaxyCon this weekend, Scott?
No. What happened?
I'll tell you off the air, but it's one you'll appreciate. I don't know that I can talk about it because pending litigation.
Oh,
pending investigation.
Okay.
Oh,
that's not good.
Yeah, no, it was it was super fun to watch from the safety of my couch, not at the convention.
Yeah, that's
GalaxyCon. Was that the one in California?
It was in Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay, so that's a different one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it is. Unfortunately, like I said, scamming season goes hand in hand with con season, goes hand in hand with the holidays. And of course, Kyle has been a retailer too, so of course we're getting that perspective from here. He's probably got some unique things to share. And then I've just been hearing about a lot of them, reported on some of them online, that kind of stuff. Again, we won't get into specifics as far as the people involved. I'm not necessarily saying that's good or bad to do. There are lots of people out there that want to name names, that kind of thing. We're not necessarily getting into that on this show, specifically because we'd rather arm you with the toolbox to prevent the generic scams that happen to you, like the actual type of scam. Exploring each individual detail of each individual type of scam that's been public or is out there in the public right now isn't going to be the best use of our time, but arming you with that knowledge and how to protect yourself as a buyer and as a seller or a trader are going to be more valuable, in my opinion. So I think that's the approach we're going to take on it. So shall we dive into some scams that are out there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, you are our guest. I know you know about some of these types of situations. Why don't you start us off with one type of scam you've been seeing online?
One that I've been seeing that's going on for years is there's like usually two. And two of the things that are, I'm sorry, I have a cheat sheet here, so you might see my face move. Two of the things are, if you're ever buying a CGC book on Facebook, anywheres, always take the couple extra steps and go to eBay. Type in not so much the CGC number, but type in the book, because you might see the same picture, which I have seen in the past couple of weeks, where someone would put up a picture of the book in, like, I don't know, one of the Facebook groups, and it's the exact same picture.
Good point. Hey, Matt 268, thanks for the super chat. We appreciate the support, man. That really helps out the channel. Thank you.
Yeah, mine was always, and to speak to Scott, is to check the census, right?
Yeah.
Pull your cert when you see that kind of stuff. Pull the certificate for sure. It's why I loved Go Collect. It's why I still love Go Collect. When you do the cert lookup, it would tell you when it sold on eBay last, so you go back and look at that listing. You could kind of come up with a provenance for some of these books sometimes, so that you would know, oh, that guy's trying to sell me that book for $50. It's clearly a $600 book.
Yeah.
Doesn't actually have that book, or does have that book and has since gotten out of comics and into meth. Like, it's
yeah,
it always let you paint a picture of what you were walking into.
Yeah,
and that was my first, the original pitch for the show. I started putting together a list of things to kind of tell people to look for in this situation. The first thing was always, before you do anything, before you commit to buying a book, before you make an offer, before you know what you're walking into. It's why you don't meet the guy who's going to sell you the comic book out of his car in the dark alley in the rough neighborhood at night. You meet him, at the police station in the day, and
I hate to break it to you, Batman isn't real. He can't save you.
Know the situation you're walking into before you go any further on one of these deals. Like, if somebody blind emails you and you're not a regular dealer, you're just a collector, you're probably getting scammed. If you're a dealer, and Scott, I know you've seen this one. Hi, I'm looking for these books, and the list is the 30 highest selling auction items ever recorded. They're scamming you. Like it's
absolutely.
so know the situation you're walking into all the time.
Well, and to go along with searching the cert number, there's actually a few things you might find if you do that. So, and again, if we're talking just that's a segment of sales, right? CGC, CBCS. If you go look up the number that's associated with that particular comic book, you might find some interesting stuff. One thing you might find is that the book that you're being shown on the grading website reflects a different grade or an entirely different comic. And that is because there are people that are taking photoshopping essentially the tops of another comic book, placing it onto either a raw book or another slab and making it look like a scan or like a poor quality photo. And that's something that can happen too. Another thing that happened not too long ago, and this was, I know, something that was circulated around with a lot of dealer and selling groups and comic book shops, is that there was a scam going on where people were slipping books out of like a CGC case, and they were putting in a lower quality copy or a fake copy of the comic book, like a cover only with like fake insides, fake guts, or it was a facsimile type cover that had been, not like a facsimile for like the Marvel reprints, but an actual, like somebody had made a facsimile to look a lot like an original cover. And then that's what they're putting inside. And they're taking out the real book from that real label. And so you can see like, okay, hey, wait a minute, this book looks a lot different grade than what was graded. Like this is a 3.5 and I'm trying to buy a 7.0 or something like that. That's one telltale sign. Or it could be, that you're linking to a Hulk 181, but actually the book you're trying to buy is Amazing Spider-Man 300 or something.
Yeah.
Those are things to watch out for.
Yeah. So one of the things that you should always do, and this is one of those, again, on my list, when you get a slab, look at it on off angles. Because so many of the books, especially from the era that people are trying to scam you from, right? You're not often going to get a guy who's selling a Batman Damned #1 who slid out Batman Damned #1 and put in something else. They're going to be books that are worth a ton of money. The newest book that probably qualifies in that category is an Ultimate Fallout 4. The Miles book. Like I can't think of another book kind of that falls into that category. But so many of the older books, if you turn them off angles, you can see the cutting errors. And you could see the paper. And if the paper doesn't look right, don't buy the book.
Yeah.
Like the big key here is doing your due diligence, right? Especially when something is being presented to you as not raw.
Yeah.
When you can't open the book to verify the book is the book, you have to look at the tiny little eccentricities. Are the staples the right era? Is the barcode printing is one of the easiest ways to look because it's, you can't change that if it's a book with a barcode. Is it printed in the right style? Doing that little bit of stuff and going online and look at barcodes 1980s high res or whatever. And you could see the way the pixelation happens and the dithering around the barcode scan or the barcode printing. And that's the stuff that just knowing about it will protect you when you're talking huge dollars, big books, slabs.
And to go along with that, I know a lot of people are going to say, but I don't, maybe I don't know enough to figure out what that's supposed to look like. Go to Heritage Auctions is a great place to go. My Comic Shop, their eBay scans, they have high quality scans where you can look, My Comic Shop, the beauty of it is they'll have raw books. Heritage, it's almost all going to be graded books. And you can go look at high quality scans and then compare them to your book. And if you notice any differences, coloration differences in barcode, the things that Kyle's talking about, that will give you some ammo to be like, wait a minute. Okay, so this is either a variation in that cover that I don't know about. And then you can do some more research from there, or there's something fishy here and it's too good to be true. And that is a recurring theme. If it's too good to be true, that's true of every scam out there. That's a really telltale sign that you should back off, sleep on it, find somebody else to get more information, or just disengage with that person usually.
Absolutely.
Cool. Scott, do you want to add to that one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a few here. Another thing is if anybody wants to use Cash App, there is absolutely no buyer protection with that software.
Well, anytime you're doing a virtual transaction, right? So Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, they all have different protections, but none of them are 100% scam proof, right? because with any of those, the transfer out window is not elongated. So I send you money on Venmo right now, you're transferring it out and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You're transferring it into something like a crypto, you're even further gone because there's no way to backtrack crypto.
Mm-hmm.
When you're buying and selling, the best thing you can do is use apps that offer a business platform. So again, PayPal is fine if the person you're buying the book from and you're giving the money to has a business account. Now you have buyer protection.
Yeah.
Right. Goods and services only or hit the road. Here is the caveat I will give to that. And I give one caveat to this particular thing. If you are buying a book from someone with whom you have a relationship. So, for instance, if I'm buying a book from Scott, I've followed Scott and his sales for years. If Scott goes, Kyle, this book isn't in my inventory yet, it's out of my personal collection, yada yada, and it says, send me a friends and family. Because I know Scott and I know his reputation and I have a relationship with Scott, even as a fan, or if Chris were to do the same thing, right? It's I know where you live kind of thing where it's, not I know, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
You go into your local comic shop and they're like, yeah, I brought this in for my own collection to see if maybe something would move. If you friends and family it, then you're in a little bit better. You're less likely to get took. It's the way I'm going to put it. If you're a person doing that, you need to know the legal ramifications of playing that game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, from a buyer perspective, if I'm a buyer or a seller and that's the game they're playing, then I'm a little bit more open to the conversation.
Yeah, but the one thing I'll add on to that, and this to me is a very important red flag. Kyle is 100% right. I have people that I interact with on a regular basis, and they've bought from me many times. I just finished wrapping up some shipping labels that I was doing for the first wave of our Heroes for Heroes charity auction. These are people that have been my viewers and they've bought comics from me a million times. And some of them will send stuff, via friends and family, so we don't incur the fees. If anybody is even slightly uncomfortable with that, I will gladly do goods and services with them. Yes. Because I don't want anybody feeling skittish. And you know what? Depending on the transaction size and all the stuff, I might say, hey, okay, that's fine. But just so you know, goods and services, they're going to tack on a little bit. I'm literally charging you for the value of the shipping label in this case. Can you go ahead and, just send me this amount, which is like the 2.5% or whatever it might be. And instead of $10, they're sending me $12.50 or something like that.
Right.
And if they're not doing that, that's fine too.
Right. That's the way you tell, right? Anybody who tries to push you or force you into something you're uncomfortable with,
that's a red flag.
Right. Is not the person to do business with. If they're saying, hey man, this is my situation. If you could do it this way, it would make my life easier. And if you go no, and they go, well, then I don't want to deal with it, then it's a bad deal anyway. If they go, no, I don't like that. And they're like, okay, fine, no problem. We'll do it the other way.
And I'll be honest, with having a PayPal business account, if you do friends and family with ShipStation, if they send you friends and family, because with ShipStation, they do give you a little bit of a break on shipping. You can't really do it with friends and family. So right. I've had customers I've had for years. Sometimes they want to do it. I'm like, no, it's fine.
Yeah. And for me, because I sell so much like this, now that's not even an option on my PayPal account. My mom can't send me friends and family.
Yeah, because with a business account, you can't even do it.
Right. I've turned all of my accounts that way. My Venmo account, same way.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think that friends and family in general is something that I don't want, because I know that there's sellers that I absolutely trust on Instagram that I've dealt with many times. A couple that I think are among the most upstanding citizens in the comic book selling community. And I know for a fact that if you go to buy from them, they'll say PayPal friends and family, this amount to me. And I don't want people to think that's automatically a red flag, but it is okay to ask that person, even with the 10,000 followers or whatever. hey, you know what? I'm more comfortable doing goods and services or having you invoice me for this transaction. And if they get irritated about that, they're probably only doing it because they're going to pay extra. And if that's the case, I would always be willing to like at least meet them halfway or something on the fees that they're going to incur for that or something, have that conversation. But to me, that's part of the cost of doing business as a seller.
Right.
I'm just going to assume that's baked into it, and that's going to be baked into my asking price. But that, same thing. They might come back to you and say, well, you asked for this deal on this book. I can't give you as good of a deal because now I'm not making as much money on it. You got to understand that those conversations might take place. Those things aren't necessarily red flags, but anytime that somebody is insisting on friends and family, that is a red flag, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So,
also, just for the record, Cash App is one of the easiest apps to charge somebody back. So you send them money, or you send someone money, you could charge people back if you're not getting your product. But at the same time, if you're selling a book and somebody wants to use Cash App to send you the money, they are going to charge you back. It's 98% of the time it's what happens.
Yeah.
Good point.
I just had one other thing that I thought of. And I'm sure, Kyle, you've noticed this. Two things. On Facebook, if it's a big deal, always get references, because on Facebook, it's a very big community. There's a lot of people that know everybody that has mutuals. And the other thing is, if I'm not saying this happens all the time, because I have a couple customers that don't have a profile photo. 9 times out of 10, if they don't have a profile photo, I get a little skeptic about it.
I have the same with people who have fake names.
That too.
If
There's
your
something
name
going
is
on right
Peter,
now.
if your name is Peter Parker, I'm not doing business with you. So
good point.
Fun story. When we started CBSN, way back when, there were several big time buyers who we now know, and we knew then, were other retailers who didn't want people to find out that what they were doing was from us and reselling, even though we didn't care. We were getting paid, it was one of those deals. And to the first person we ever had to have a big kind of come to Jesus about as a non-payer or as a scammer was somebody who had a fake name, even though they had a profile picture. Their name was like, Roger Smith or whatever. And when you would go to their PayPal, it would say like Steve something. And you're going, something doesn't line up, but the guy pays every time until he doesn't. And that's one of those, did something happen or was this a scam? So one of the things that we've had to do here at the Experience, and it's an interesting sort of thing that we're learning with the YouTube live sale, is that most folks on YouTube don't have their name as their username.
Yeah.
So it becomes about customer data collection, right? So it's why we have our registration form. So you go in, you say, oh, my username is Gamma Base Auctions. My name is Scott. Okay, this is my PayPal email. And so if your PayPal email matches the name you're given, we're a little bit better. But we know that if all of a sudden we're starting to see some inconsistencies in that customer data, likely we're not going to get paid, or there's going to be a scam there. Or if people don't fill out the form, we know right away that this is someone who's going to claim and flake. So you can route back around and just put the product back up for sale.
Yeah.
Right. It's about customer information gathering and then distilling. And so, people who don't have profile pictures, and again, on YouTube, a lot of people don't have profile pictures because they don't actually have channels. They have an account, but no real channel. So they never have a reason to throw one up.
Oh, and by the way, anybody can have any name and any picture come up in the chat on YouTube. Like, people can impersonate anybody. I mean, you've talked to George Washington, or 3 versions of the same account, or somebody you think is actually this other person. So you might want to go back to their page and make sure that when you click on that link of their profile, that it actually goes back to the page you're familiar with if you know that person.
Right.
The problem
So-
is not everybody who's buying on your YouTube. Some of them, they just have an account, but they don't have any like videos or history or posts. But if they look like there's somebody you know, and you're familiar with them being like a YouTuber, even in a small way or in another fashion, you can go track them down through that way and make sure it's the right account.
Right. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's always about, for me, it's always been, I don't care if you have a fake name, right? Like, I had a big time customer whose name is the main character from Fight Club.
The narrator.
But, yeah, Rob Paulson.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, that dude has his, yeah,
It's funny.
Milton Staple. Yeah, but no, it's this idea of he has a fake name on Facebook because his job is one that if he were on under his real name would cause him some trouble.
Yep.
So fake name, but when he fills out when you get his data, it's his real name, his real address, all of his real information, and you can track it back and it all lines up. And that's the important thing. So it's I usually like to require, especially on Facebook, his name is Bob. It'd be easier to type into friggin' pirate ship if his name was Bob. But no, it's the having a profile picture, having a profile, having friends, having posts on social media, especially on Facebook. Now, again, with YouTube and Twitch and what we do, we've had to do some other things, but when you're doing a sort of risky transaction, you need to be able to do the work to track down information.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And on Facebook, by the way, this also could work on Instagram. On Facebook, I think it's more prevalent. That same idea, click on that person's name. Let's say we'll use Robert Paulson just because it's the example that came up and it's from Fight Club. Well, if you go search Robert Paulson in Facebook, be on the lookout for multiple profiles that have that same identity, or they're from the same location. That is a really common thing on Facebook. And you see this a lot on Facebook Marketplace, is somebody clones an account that's part of that community already. And then they'll go in there and then pretend to be that person essentially as a second account. And that kind of sullies that person's good name in some cases or whatever. He's always here, guys. He's going to burn the building down. I swear. If we don't give him that swing line stapler back. Pleasure to see you, Milton. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you got your package, by the way. Another one of the fine folks that picked up some items from Heroes for Heroes. So
if you're waiting on stuff for me, I'm waiting on Gemini mailers.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I thought I had more than I do. I only have two. So I had to wait.
But yeah, some of this might sound like cyber stalking, that's a legit, call out. But at the same time, this is like when you're getting that fishy feeling, or you're dealing with somebody you don't know, and money is about to change hands. I think it's just doing your due diligence online in some cases. I'll be honest, I very rarely have ever had to do this as a seller. Not so much because, hey, the funds are coming in, they're giving me their address, I'm sending them their stuff. As a buyer, I'm really careful about this kind of stuff. But that's a big reason why I usually work with people I know or through a trusted service where I have a guarantee on my money.
Well, so one of the things that I've done, or that I've flocked to, are the sales that have the biggest numbers. So you go to a gamma-based auction sale, and again, I said this before we were in the air. When I started selling online, Scott was already doing it. And so I'm going to call him out because I didn't know if I could trust Scott because I didn't know anybody else was doing this. And so when it's your first interaction with something, take your time, don't get sucked in, watch. And I noticed how many people were showing up for sales, how professional Scott and his team were. Although at the time it was just Scott and Chris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So team. But it's this idea of, okay, they're putting in the effort. A lot of people here. This is probably legit. And that made me more comfortable. Take your time. And then vetted sellers. Right? So if you can say, oh, this seller has a brick and mortar store with a business license in this place, that's a huge kind of safety net for you, because at least they're a real place and it's not Joe out of his garage. Not that there's anything wrong with Joe out of his garage, but it's an added layer of security, right? It's an added layer of buyer confidence. People who have eBay stores with tons of reviews. One of the people that I started doing this with, Jesse James Comics, millions of eBay feedback. Tons of eBay feedback, right? So I go to Jesse James, I see it's Jesse James Comics, I look up Jesse James on eBay. Well, you're not going to have millions of positive feedback from, 25 years of selling on eBay if you're a scammer. It's just not, it doesn't work that way. And then the other thing that you can look at is groups of these people working together. And, the more, Scott has people that he's constantly sharing streams to and sharing streams with, and, groups where it's okay. If they're in this group, we're vouching for them. It's why when we started the experience, we started the way we did we didn't have any live sales on the air until we had 4 or 5 vetted local comic shops that were ready to do things, and then we were able to bring in some of the dealers who are con dealers or, just Facebook dealers or whatever, and sort of round out the thing. But it's groups of people working together, because now if you buy something from me and you can't get a hold of me, or you feel like I'm ghosting you, well, you know how to get a hold of Bronze, and Bronze can get a hold of me. That kind of idea of a group of people gives you a layer of insulation, gives you a layer of security. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to sell what I do for a living in any way. I'm just saying, as a buyer, I look for that. I look for, I saw Gamma Base in this group that I know is cool. This group that I know is cool. This group that I know is cool. And his stream was shared all those places. Well, let me go watch his stream. He must have had some good shit.
100%,
and also having a Diamond and Lunar account helps as well. Just to show that we're not, someone's not buying, saying, oh yeah, we're doing a pre-sale, and you're getting it through another shop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of points of failure there in that particular chain. And people might think, oh, that happens. No, that happens a lot. And that's actually use it as a segue to talk about the next type of scam. And I have to be, again, this isn't like, none of this stuff is, I think, automatically you see it and it's a scam. This is the red flags that should make you go, wait a minute, what am I entering into here?
Well, real quick. Because you said it that way, I want to bring this up. Sure. One of the things I tell people all the time to look out for, because it became kind of my role in our local comics community to be the guy who could spot the scam, because I was the guy who was doing the online stuff more than anybody. And it's the same stuff you look for when someone is phishing you or catfishing you or trying to get your social security number, trying to steal your identity. You look for the same things, the way over promising for an under deliver. I'll give you if you send me $1,000 now, I'll send you 30 million US. Kind of thing. Or I made the joke before, you send me, Hawkman Convergence #2, and in exchange for the loan of your book, I will send you back Action Comics #1.
Yeah,
that you look for these things, or like on our thumbnail, leaving out parts of phraseology in English that you can tell the app, the thumbnail or the email or whatever was made by a non-native speaker of your language, or was made by AI or something else. This is not scam. Well, it's missing an so that's a thing to, like, basic stuff that you tell your grandparents to watch out for, so they're not getting taken.
Also, just saying this is not a scam would be also a red flag.
Right. It's true.
Hey, not a scam. Just got some great books for you, dude. No worries.
Right. But it's this. Yeah. Anybody who says it's not a scam is probably a scam.
Yeah.
Like any book that says it's a collector's edition isn't actually worth anything.
Hey
Special
guys, I
collector-
just gotta shut my cam off for just 1 second. My wife needs me for a quick second. Okay?
For sure, man.
Hi, Scott,
no problem.
wife.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Yeah,
All right.
you're good, buddy. But no,
Um,
it's this idea of looking for the same things you look for when you're going through your email.
Yeah.
Links that are supposed to take you to Facebook that actually take you to someplace else. That kind of stuff. Well, we talked about that, Phil. It's when you're in a situation where there's someone sort of vouching for you, right? Like you're in a community. It makes it easier to not get taken.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean that goes also with the idea of somebody vouching. In that particular example, is to shine some light on that without naming names. It's a seller that I'd worked with before that I vouched for, because I'm like, hey, I've done lots of transactions with this person. They're on the up and up. You've never heard of them because they're tiny, but hey, I can tell you, I've done many, many deals with them. And that matters, depending on who you trust.
I had a customer named Jeremy who vouched for Gamma Base. Like, it's this idea of guys, remember 2016, 2017, the number of people who were selling on Facebook was like as big as the number of people on this broadcast right now. So when I keep going back to referencing, the early days where I was watching Scott's streams, it's because it was the Wild West and we were all kind of learning. So I had a customer named Jeremy who vouched for Gamma Base. So I watched Gamma Base, and then they were in all these groups that I was in. So I watched Gamma Base, and then I started doing it myself, and I threw in with Jen and Jesse and some of those people, because putting myself in with a group of other people who were, sort of like-minded, felt like I had some safety as a seller. So it's this idea of group mentality. But
And
yeah,
I mean, honestly, Kyle, back then we would, and this is just how much it's changed. I mean, to have 100 people in an auction was nothing.
right.
In our 1-year anniversary show, we had up to 450 people in our room.
Right. Yeah. And now your numbers are probably a fifth of that.
About 30 to 40 in auction.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the things that have happened on Facebook.
It's true. And just the saturation of the market. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time, with our people, but it's this idea that as something grows, the number of people who are going to try to twist and manipulate that thing to weasel their way in and take the easy way out and make a quick buck grow as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started doing sales here on YouTube, there were like 3 others really doing comic book sales on YouTube, like in kind of the way we were doing it, right? Which is that sort of Facebook Live style where we're live, call a book. Other people were doing other things, but doing it like this. And the bigger it's gotten, the more we've had to kind of stay ahead of the scam curve.
Yeah.
Of saying, well, this seems like a weird situation. Let's get rid of that. And then, oh, hey, here are all these clearly Russian porn bots coming on trying to sell comic books with this weird random link. I'm sure that takes you to a phishing site, but Super Nudes XXY or whatever shouldn't be selling comics. That doesn't seem right. So again, you find these, the bigger it gets, the more. The joke I make about online scams and selling is that it's like the Force, right? For every great way there becomes to sell, there has to be a great way to scam, because they balance each other. And it just.
Yeah. Well, and also what affected Facebook, I think, a little was Whatnot.
Yeah. Well,
that's a whole.
Yeah. I mean, we can do a whole other show on this online selling and streaming thing, and we should definitely talk because I just think we'd have fun talking. But
yeah, well, once we're done tonight, we'll exchange digits.
Yeah, we'll hook up. Yeah, but no, but that was the big thing to think about, is look for the things you should always be looking for. Is the syntax on the grammar right? Do they use your name correctly? Do they, are the links the right links going to the right places? is it English that English people would speak? Just that kind of stuff. And it sounds dumb, but it's true.
But
like,
it's not.
do they want you to pay with a green dot card?
A Walmart money order.
Walmart, yeah. If they won't take a Western Union money order or a cashier's check,
those are automatic red flags.
Especially when you're talking big money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So just that's one thing. Bronze, you had a list of stuff. Let's dig in.
Yeah. So one thing. Oh, I accidentally hit my keyboard with something. So my apologies for my keyboard is a scam. No. So there's a few things that I think are very close to me in terms of I've been involved in helping people with these situations. So one of them, and we're talking about Scott mentioned Diamond and Lunar accounts, Penguin Random House, that kind of stuff. So one thing that I do want to caution people again, full disclaimer, red flags, not automatic scams, on the topic of pre-orders, on the topic of giving somebody money now for something that is not only going to have to be wait to be shipped, but also isn't even in their hands yet. You really need to kind of think about that, I think. And again, we're not naming names, but I will just say, unfortunately, there are about 5 at one point very prominent large online comic shops that were taking pre-orders on like 9/8 CGC comics or CBCS or whatever, and then not fulfilling those orders, at least not in a time frame that was anywhere near reasonable. And a lot of this happened during the boom of modern brand new comic books and hot spec on FOC books, that kind of stuff, during the 2020, 2021 time frame. And that is,
also
one of the things
important to remember during the pandemic.
Right. And then, but there are unfortunately still cases where this does happen. And it's something that I think people need to be aware of.
I bring it up for a reason.
Yeah.
That was, for the first time in my lifetime, the only time I couldn't go into a local comic shop and do those transactions. So the reason I bring it up is that for the first time ever, you had that ability to manipulate a system and a tremendous demand on that system. So that's something, right, to look at as Bronze was going through it. I'm like, this is another reason, this is another thing to watch out for so you don't get scammed. If all of a sudden everybody is forced to do something, the number of people who aren't doing it correctly, even if they're not intentionally scamming you, is going to be through the roof. So you're going to feel scammed sometimes when you're not actually being scammed.
Exactly. Because a lot of those cases, it wasn't like a universal across the board where nobody got their stuff. It was, generally speaking, where a lot of people overextended. They were doing things that, like Kyle was talking about, they weren't really familiar with the process, and they didn't expect roadblocks to come up. It's like the supply chain. The supply chain is very delicate, right? We've learned that if you throw a monkey wrench in the supply chain, you can have delays and shortages and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you're talking about, I'm going to get my cash from you, I'm going to send off the books to CGC when they come in after I do my orders, they're going to come back. Most of them are going to be 9/8, and then I'm going to get them back in 8 to 12 weeks, send you your book. That's all good and fine when that happens the way it's supposed to. But when it is, I'm going to take your money, I'm going to pre-order the books are delayed, I'm going to get those books, they didn't come in the condition and the paper quality that I expect, so most of them aren't 9/8, so I have to reorder or acquire more and spend more money that I'm taking from other 9/8 pre-orders or other resources from my shop. And now I send those to CGC and that they don't come back for 14, 16 months. All of a sudden, a lot of places got overextended. So that's kind of what happened the most, but it did happen in other ways too.
Right. And I think it's an important thing to remember the difference between being scammed and feeling scammed. I pay taxes every year and feel scammed, but I'm not actually being scammed.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? Like, businesses will sometimes have unfortunate realities that they cannot plan for and that they don't easily recover from. So if you know you're dealing with a reputable seller to begin with, and then all of a sudden you start to feel scammed, reaching out to that seller before you say, I got scammed, and finding out what happened usually will prevent a lot of the fallout, right? It's oh, well, they said they were going to, get these books and I could get a 9.8 guaranteed. And for all intents and purposes, they were trying. But there's a paper shortage, so the book took 16 weeks to get printed, and then it was printed on tissue paper, so it came in crushed like a a Christmas bow, and so then they had to reorder and buy more and they're trying. It just isn't here yet.
Yeah,
that's feeling scammed, not being scammed.
Yeah.
And so that's when you just say, you know what, we're gonna part the field as friends, refund me my dough, and we'll just move on from this. So,
yeah, and that actually brings up a good point. But it is important to remember that there is a difference between feeling scammed and being scammed. At the end of the day, though, if you don't get your money or your good or service that you paid for, that is what we're ultimately, from my perspective, trying to prevent here.
Right.
And in a situation where, and this happens a lot in collectibles, the words "no refunds" are thrown out there. You really have to, that's like an extra little check in my brain when I see that. Okay, no refunds. They're saying that to cover their butt, to say that I am not going to get my money back. So how confident am I that I'm going to get my good or service that I'm paying for? And that's, you're kind of, in that space. A lot of trusted shops will give refunds in those kinds of situations. And you have to be careful.
The ones that won't give refunds, the trusted shops that won't give refunds, will have a return or cancellation policy. Right? Always ask when, especially, again, I keep talking about when we're dealing in big money, ask to see the policies.
Yeah.
Right? So if I return or we have to cancel, what is my refund policy? Is it no refunds, but I get credit towards my next purchase? Okay. Is it, we'll only give you a refund if we can't fulfill our end, even if you're, what are your policies? What are your procedures?
Yeah.
So I know to protect myself and say, well, okay, if this is your policy where there is literally no refund, I'm unwilling to pay until I know I can hold the product. Can I give a deposit? Or what can we do? Can we negotiate a deal? Can we negotiate something? Can we talk something through? And anybody who's not willing to have a conversation with you probably knows they're going to screw you eventually.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, is communication with a seller or the buyer, depending on which side of it you're on, or a trader. And that's something we need to talk about a little bit too here is trading. But that communication should be pretty open. It should be like hey, here's my concerns, or I just want to know, is this the case? And there should be a good answer that you can kind of get behind there. If there's not definitely a red flag. I do want to talk about this because misrepresentation is a big one. And this was a great comment that got brought up in my Discord when I kind of asked this topic. And it's one that I've heard before, but I've kind of forgot to think about for this topic. A photo is worth a million words is kind of, something that we can talk about, but photos are something that you got to be careful with. If somebody won't show you the comic book outside of a poly bag, if somebody won't show you the front, back, and the majority of the comic book in high detailed photos, or they're, let's say you ask, hey, can I get a better photo of the back? Can I get a photo of the corner to see what the corner looks like? If you ask for that and they're not trying to supply you with that, or they're not trying to tell you how they're going to work with you to get that, that's a red flag to me. Because the scam to watch out here for is that they could be trying to sell you a book that they're offering in a higher condition than it actually is, or a book that they don't actually have in their possession. That's the other kind of part of this. So I just think that's an important one to watch out for. I think it's a great point. I don't want to call out, let's just say in certain live selling platforms, things are often shown very quickly. and you have to be careful. And it's never a problem to say, hey, can you take that out of the bag and kind of show us the condition? I'm always relative with this stuff, right? Like if I was going after, oh, I missed that book on FOC and I want to pick it up and it's $3.50 and I kind of half trust the seller, I'm probably going to buy it anyway because it's not that much. But if we're talking about like a $200 book or $500 book or a $700 book,
right,
dang sure I'm going to want to see it out of the bag and see what's going on with that book.
Something to note is that some sales platforms limit the number of photos you can send.
Yeah.
So when you're asking for photos, ask specifically for the things you care about. So for me, one of the big ones I would do when I'd buy books on eBay, picture of the corners or the bound corners and pictures of the bottom unbound corner, right? Pictures of the interior center page with the staples, Marvel value stamp. And if it's from the era where we had newsstand and direct market, a picture of the corner box. And those
what
were
I
the,
usually sorry.
No, but those were the things for me that I would look at to tell, okay, is the condition that they're marking it in on their listing, because there's photos on most listings. So I could see some there, and then additional photos for me. Does everything match? Does everything look the way I want? And then I could do my due diligence and, okay, let's look at the barcode and make sure it's the right style printing. Let's look at the corners and make sure that they line that sort of stuff. But always ask specifically, because if I can only send you 6 pictures, I'm going to send you the 6 best pictures I can take to make the book as high quality looking as it can be. And that may not help you.
What are you gonna say, Scott?
What I was going to say is, like, just for instance, with our auctions, if we have a book that roughly, $500 or higher, when we show a preview every week of what the big hitters are going to be. And if it's a big book, I will take it out of the bag. I will do a million pictures of it. So while we're auctioning, because, our auctions, Chris, you have seen them. They are pretty quick.
Yeah.
We don't, heaven forbid, we take one of those books out and we damage it. And that could, especially during a feed, that's why when we do something like that,
we the camera and like the camera's in your way and there's all kinds of things that can go wrong.
Right.
Tape could get stuck to it, and it's not a cop out. It's just, we want to be careful with the book. So
I tore a
do,
cover on the first appearance of it's Wonder Woman's sister, whose name I can't think of right now. Starts with an N. Nubia.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I was holding it like this, and it started like I was moving too fast, and I actually tore the cover mid-cover. And I'm like, well, now I can't even sell this book now.
No, that's horrible.
Because I tried to take it out of a bag and board during a show.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I always love that about what Scott did. And I always offer, hey, if you want pictures of one of these books, just say, hey, in the comments, I will give you right of refusal. Claim the book and ask me to send you photos.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decide once I send you the photos that you don't want the book, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. But see here, what you're hearing, if you're watching, what you're hearing is ways that people have come up with to make sure that's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, people that are going to be reputable, they're going to let you know, like I've damaged a book on a stream, like when I'm selling, and I've been really upfront. Hey, guess what, folks? And luckily for me, it's all been like pressable style defects, which most people are generally okay with. But I'm like, hey, I'm going to now start this book lower because I bent it, getting it out of here, trying to show you the fancy cover or whatever that's going on because the bag wasn't showing it correctly. But yeah, that's a really legit point. Guys, I have 2 more points that I want to get to relatively quickly. So
Yes,
I'm going to move on.
Hit them.
So the next one is, it's kind of a couple quick things that involve payments. And we talked about payments a little bit, but this is a specific type of scam. And, I think some people are probably tuning in for like these kind of examples. Your payment didn't go through. So you have the seller telling you, even though you just sent your payment, through one of those means of transaction, oh, it didn't go through. I don't see it on my end. A lot of really honest buyers are then going to be put on the back foot. And this is a really common tactic amongst scammers, is they're going to make you want to feel like you didn't do the right thing, like you're not living up to the etiquette, that you've made like a social mistake here, basically, of like not doing the correct thing. And they might throw things at you like, hey man, I need to know if you're going to pay for this book because I need to try to sell it again if you're not going to. Like, come on, or hey, you're wasting my time. Those kind of comments can often follow this up, or they can come across extremely professional and polite about it. Like, hey, I'm sorry your transaction didn't go through. Can you please try to run it again? You'll usually see it very much on one end of the spectrum or the other. And what'll often happen is you'll have somebody say, oh, hey, tell you what, that didn't go through on PayPal. Can you send it via Cash App? Or can you send it via another method? Can you send it through Zelle? Some of these other things we talked about. And what's ultimately happening here, if that's the case, is your transaction did go through and they're trying to double dip on you. They're trying to get double the money. And sometimes they'll send you the book for double the money. Sometimes they'll send you nothing and they'll have taken your money twice. So you need to be very careful about that and always say like, okay, well, let me go check on my end and see what happened.
Right. And
I've had this happen before, where I have sent funds, but for whatever reason, there's like PayPal, normally it's instantaneous. I've had it at least once before that I can think of say that it's pending instead of instantly going through. Sometimes when that happens, I think it's kind of like a weird error on PayPal's part, but also sometimes I think it's because they are suspicious of the account that's receiving the money. It doesn't happen very often. But in that situation, I said, hey, you know what? It says it's pending. It says it's sent. And I sent them a screenshot of very carefully of just that part that didn't show any account information like that, but just showing them like, no, it really says it's pending. Because that seller was really skeptical. They said, well, that doesn't happen. Well, no, it's happening. I can try to cancel this transaction, but if I try to send the money again, either the same thing's going to happen or you're going to get the money twice. I don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah, it's, I always encourage people, screenshot when you send the money, keep it for your records. It's the same reason when you fill out a check, you keep the negative or the carbon, or you write it in a little book so you know where your money went. Then at the same time, if somebody says your payment didn't go through, tell them, well, then let's wait 24 hours. Let me go to the bank. Let me get with my credit card company. Don't ever do it right away. And if they're not willing to wait 24 hours, then you probably need to cut bait.
Yeah.
You need to walk. And what any real responsible seller will do is say, okay, yeah, sure. Maybe I just didn't get the notification. Maybe it's hung up in the system somewhere. Maybe your bank isn't transmitting data right now. Millions of things can happen. I had literally, from me, the admin of the Experience PayPal account, sending to the Experience PayPal account, money get hung up. Like, it's the same email. It's just two different buckets. Like, it's the same. And PayPal's like, whoa. It stuff happens that doesn't ever happen.
Yeah.
And so just always never make an immediate restitution. Always say, let's see what happens in the morning. Let me call PayPal. Whatever.
And sorry, I was gonna say real fast. Go ahead.
The other thing to look for is if someone is saying, well, make PayPal payment, and then they go, it didn't go through, ask for something like Square or I'm gonna forget it. It's green. I can see the logo. They do POS systems.
Shopify?
No. They also make tax software. Anyway, ask for it'll come to me like at 3 a.m. But ask for a more traditional credit card processor.
Yeah.
Do you have a Square account? Is there a whatever? Can you invoice me then? I sent you the money on my end. I don't see it. Would you send me an invoice? Because then you've got a piece of paper that says they're asking for this money. Here's the invoice. Here's the money I sent. And you have more recourse that way.
Yeah.
So
going along with this kind of, mid-transaction kind of scam that happens, there's another one that's very closely related. if you're in the middle of a transaction and that person says that they are trying to process the payment, and then they say, "Oh, it's asking me for a security code," this is an alarm bell that's going off. And I've seen this one happen before. This is a real bad one. Okay, QuickBooks. There we go. So what this is basically doing is they are trying to hack your account, and they are trying to then they have your email address because they know where to send money, and they say it's asking for a security code. And what they have done is they have clicked on "Forgot my password," and they are looking for the security code to get into your account. So what that should tell you is if you've done transactions, or even if you haven't done transactions on the platform you're using, like PayPal, whatever, if something is going out of the ordinary, do not communicate with the person you're doing the transaction with on how to fix it. They're asking for this code, and they're insisting that they need one to complete the transaction. Google, in a separate window, does PayPal ask for a security code in the middle of a transaction? Literally the thing that's being asked. Seek out independent information on what you're supposed to be doing. Because in that case, that is not what happens. There's no verification code that somebody else needs to enter. There are, like, for example, on Venmo, that it will ask, like, if I'm sending money to somebody or they're sending money to me for the first time, it might ask for the last 4 numbers of my phone number. And that is a real thing that happens. That is normal on that platform. And they're doing that as a trust check. But it's not a unique identifier that is like a one-time security code, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's not the full phone number. So that is where it gets interesting, right? Like, you have to kind of be aware of how that platform works. And if you aren't aware, don't try to troubleshoot it with the person that you're brand new to doing business with. Or even if you've done business, because this is actually kind of a bonus tip. If you've done business with them a few times, there's kind of this small yes, big yes thing in sales, and it translates to scams. Small yes, big yes is like, "Oh, hey, you enjoying the weather out there? It's been pretty nice." Yeah. "Hey, what about the sports team? They're doing pretty good." Yeah. "Hey, what about buying this brand new stereo? It looked pretty cool, huh?" Yeah. It's that idea of conditioning you to say yes. The same thing happens in scams. Small transaction, small transaction, small transaction. They're all flawless. Huge transaction. All of a sudden, everything goes sideways.
Yep.
Okay. So if your transactions jump exponentially at one point and you're dealing with a business, try to treat it as if it's the first transaction again. Don't just get comfortable with somebody after a few small transactions with them. So
I do want to mention what Bron's talking about is great in terms of Googling what the transaction processes are for each different platform. There are platforms I'm looking at that are becoming available in the United States that have some real potential for work that I do, that have protections built in, verification codes and things like that when I first use them, because my business partner is in Japan and he uses it and it's common over there, seemed odd to me. But again, any legitimate company is going to have their standards and practices, their FAQs, this is what this is, posted in a public facing place.
Yeah.
And so it's when Sean and I had to set this up, we had to establish a relationship code, which is a code that only the two of us know. And that when I send him money, he has to punch in his code to say that he has seen that I've tried to send him money, receives that money, and then I get a verification number. And what that does is it prevents anyone from hacking and sending themselves money from your phone. Because it's not like he puts it in, I have to say, is this the right code? It's this whole idea of, it's like, if you and your wife have a safe word, like, or, the word that you say when you're on the phone to let everybody know you're okay. Right.
Right.
That thing that whatever, but yeah, your password, your passcode that you have with other people in your life, Yeah. When in my store, bug out code. Right. In my store, if I started talking about pancakes, my staff would know we're getting robbed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that, it was, you know, these things that are innocuous enough that, so just be on the lookout for that stuff. It's really important to be able to look that stuff up.
Yeah.
The other thing, just if the app or service they're asking you to pay through isn't available in your country, don't use it. There are versions of Zelle and Venmo and PayPal and stuff that are country specific to other countries. So if they go, hey, can you use blah, 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 and you've never heard of it, and you go to Google it and say, oh, it's only available in, you know, Trinidad and, you know, West Nowheresville, ask them to go to a more reputable thing or to do a wire, something else.
Yeah.
That gives you protections, because again, this app that I'm talking about, I'm taking a significant risk every time I send money through it. If I wasn't sending it to someone with whom I've had a 20-year business relationship, I wouldn't feel comfortable using it.
Yeah. All right, I got one more, folks. One more on my list, and then I'll cover it pretty quickly here. This is one that, you know, it affected a couple people that are closer to me. You know, I've never really been truly majorly scammed. Very minor stuff in my past. This is one to watch out for, and it involves trading books. I think a great thing about comic book fans is trading. Buying a comic book, finding a steal on a comic book at a place, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they had it for this price. That's a good feeling. I know a lot of collectors love that feeling. You know, getting that, you know, scoring that grail, like I was talking about in the beginning of the show. But I think one of the most awesome transactions I've ever had involved me trading a bunch of Spider-Man stuff to a Spider-Man fan, and they were trading a bunch of X-Men stuff to me. It was a fantastic transaction. I think we were both really happy with the stuff we got. Those types of transactions can be really fun because you're like, well, I got this stuff. I don't really want it. You got that stuff. I want that. Let's make a deal. If you know the person pretty well, the risk on this one diminishes a little bit. Like me and that person I talked about, we'd been following each other online for years. So it wasn't a random thing that came up. But if you're somebody who posts your stuff on social media, you post the stuff you like or you're looking for on social media, and somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have, 3 of those 5 books you're looking for. Here's some photos. But I noticed you have this 1 or 2 books that I'm really looking for. And if that sounds fishy to you, this is where that doing that social media research really, go to their page. Do they look like they're buying and selling or collecting comic books or whatever pretty regularly? Or are they only posting, pictures of them riding around on motorcycles or something like that? Not necessarily instant red flag, but like something you should really be paying attention to at this point. Because if you do want to enter into this deal with somebody in this transaction, if they came to you and it's their idea, do not blindly send off your comic books to this person. Even if they have a tracking number, even if they have a photo of them having packed up the comic books, here's the comic books, here's what the label on top, there you go. Here's the tracking number. And you see that it's, shipping label created is how it comes up in tracking. Even if it shows that a package has been sent. And even if you see it going along, until you open it and see it, that's when you're going to be like, oh, okay, I got it. And I'll send you your stuff. If that sounds unfair to that person, that's the deal they entered into. Because I have seen big books change hands this way. They see the items coming and they went, okay, I'm going to drop my stuff in the mail. That stuff got rerouted to a different house or some different way right before that transaction finished. They never got the comic books. When the package finally was tracked down, it didn't have the comic books inside of it. And that person really sent off their massive key comic books to this person. And then they can't find them. So that's something that really can happen. Trades in person, like if you're going to meet up somebody at a con, cool. You're going to meet up somebody at an LCS, cool. Asking an LCS to be like an intermediary for this type of transaction, if that's one you're familiar with, might be a really good suggestion. Hey, tell you what, you send the comic books to this LCS, they'll hold on to it. And when I hear that they have it, I'll send the stuff. And then when they say they have it, we can both go pick up our books. How about that? That's a good suggestion.
That was actually something I did a lot. And I'll tell you, What I often would do is I'd have a regular come in and say, hey, Joe and I met through your Facebook group and we're doing a swap. I'm going to drop this book here. Joe's going to bring his book in, give him this, and I'll be back to pick mine up. And it doesn't cost me anything. And odds are, if I've got two collectors coming into my store, they're going to buy something else, even if it is just an energy drink. So, like, it works for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that kind of thing, again, it's meeting in the police station during the day. It's that fine neutral ground to do something. And I would say this, my rule has always been this. I won't trade through the mail.
Yeah, that's fair.
And reason being is that I go to enough conventions. I do enough conventions. We're going to likely cross paths. If we found each other in a group or something online and we want to do a deal, well, then let's work out. Oh, you're going to Motor City Comic-Con in Detroit. I'm going to Motor City Comic-Con in Detroit. Let's meet at Motor City and we'll do the deal. Or, oh, you know, you're going to Emerald City Comic-Con. I'm not, but my friend Steve is. I'll give my book to Steve. I'll put you and Steve in a chat. You guys meet and Steve will handle the intermediate, right?
Yeah.
There's always people you can trust that you can do this stuff with. So think about never trading through the mail, always trying to find a way to a layer of insulation. So, all right. I just want to mention a couple of scams that I had on my list. We're going to be very, 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 very quickly because I don't want to talk about them, but I want you to know that they're happening. If you're watching a live sale and the camera moves, don't buy it. And what I mean by that is if you're watching me do a sale and I'm about to show you a book and all of a sudden this happens and you can't see what I'm showing you, don't buy that thing. I'm trying to distract you from what I'm doing, which is I'm telling you a book is better than it is. I'm telling you that a book is an old book and it's not something. I'm trying to distract you. It's happening on certain sales platforms more than others. And largely it's happening with people who are buying collectible cards, TCG.
I was ready to say that.
Yep.
Stuff like that, right? They're trying to sleight of hand you. It doesn't happen a ton in what we're doing because it's, oh crap, I hit my camera. Let me hold the book up again. You know, it's a little different scheme, but just that thing. And if there's a giveaway that requires purchase, watch what happens. If you buy something and you get entered in the giveaway and somebody wins and you go back the next time you buy something and you're entered in the giveaway, same person wins. Just know they're forcing you to buy something with never actually giving a prize away. Right? Watch who wins and what their actions have been throughout the stream. We have a lot of frequent winners here in the experience. We love our customers. We do a lot of giveaways. And because people show up to the same show all the time, they may win multiple times. But if they're the only person ever winning, or they're the person literally buying the most stuff in the sale, and then they win, something is not as up and up as you would like it to be. So just be careful that you're not spending money you can't afford to eat to try to win something just because you want to win something.
I mean, at our auction every week, we give away at least like one trade for anybody that purchases. But what we do is, like, let's say we have 100 different purchases that night. We just Chris calls up good old Siri. We're like, say a number between such and such. It's the cleanest way to do it.
Right. It's why we use the StreamYard giveaway tool where we can put it on screen and you can see the process of randomization.
Yeah,
right.
And we keep the camera right on screen when he's doing it, so they see the number. We got the sheets and everything, so it's pretty legit.
Right, but if at any point it looks like, oh, this is weighted. If at any point it looks like, oh, they're clearly diverting prizes to this person. They're probably diverting them to themselves. They're buying the things that aren't going to sell for what they need to make, and they're diverting the prizes to themselves to keep from having to give them to you. Yeah. So It's watch the comments and watch what happens. Don't just trust that things are fair.
Yeah.
Those and in those two scams, I'm seeing a lot on a certain platform.
Yep.
One place in particular.
Uh-huh.
And that place is at the moment what we would call the Wild West in this business. This online selling business. There are no rules. So you've got to protect yourself in a lawless world. You've got to carry the 6-shooter and protect yourself. Or at least I think that was the message of Gunsmoke.
It was. I used to watch it when I was a kid.
So, all right. Don't get scammed. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say something real fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, don't get scammed. I also want to do, we've been talking about it all night, but he was gracious enough to be here. Scott, do you want to take a second to tell us about Gamma Base real fast, so where people can find you if they want to go check out your sales we've been talking about?
Oh yeah. If you want, Chris, I can give you a link for our weekly auction.
Throw it in the private chat and I'll throw it in the links.
Okay. Basically we run every Thursday night, starts at 7:00. We usually run for about 2.5 hours, depending, on how the night's going. And basically, we auction between 12 to 15 books, but we do tons of what's called side stagers, and you can give best offers, or sometimes we do 50% off, and we do that every Thursday. We have the Gamma Base fans group, and we do a lot of pre-sales for a lot of new books. We do replies in there. We do a whole bunch of things. So it's not just, we don't just stick with the auctions. We do a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, and that's on Facebook to the link we're going to post
yes.
up. Okay.
Yes, directly on Facebook.
And I'll just say, I've bought stuff from Scott at Gamma Base, had really great transactions, and he's also going around to cons and stuff like that. He's got a big presence out there too. So you're going to see new stuff coming in, new collections coming in. So again, I'll personally vouch for them and checking them out. So
yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say. That's actually what I was going to say. Bronze is don't get scammed. Buy from people who have been doing this a while. Don't, so people like Scott, follow Gamma Base, follow Scott, follow the experience, and people who've been doing it a while, they're going to protect you because otherwise they don't get to keep doing it.
I just got a book from an experience sale from Henri today. So that was a great book. A nice little Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck signed Secret Wars come in. So that was fun.
Oh, nice.
I thought maybe you bought his book.
No, he had a claim sale, and I was okay, what's the biggest thing you got? I'll pick that up today. So that was cool. But I did want to discuss real fast. I'm gonna have to hop off here really quickly because I'm maybe about to lose power. But I did want to say next week on the Devil's Advocates, we're actually going to be doing a holiday buyer's guide.
I knew I forgot to do something.
A gift guide for the comic book people out there, kind of a fun show, seasonal show. So bring your eggnog, put whatever you want in it, and we'll get jolly next week.
Absolutely. And so guys, I want to thank Scott again for being an OG. The experience would not exist if people like Scott hadn't kind of paved the way on Facebook, doing the things they were doing way back when they were doing it. So it's, that needs to be said. But I also want to throw this out there, guys, the Experience Facebook page, the Experience website. I know Scott's the same way. I know Chris is the same way. If you think you might be in a situation where you're about to get taken, reach out to somebody else and be like, does this look legit? Does this look sketch? We're all here to kind of help out. So the West Coast is about to get blown off the face of the planet, much like where I live does 363 days a year. So it's maybe why Bronze looks like he's in the 1997 AOL commercial. So we are going to get out of here. There is a link, bit.ly/Devil's Advocates. Is there something you want us to talk about? Put it in the thing, and we will talk about it. We will see everybody next time here on the EXP.